Crystal Palace have won the FA Cup after beating Manchester City by 1-0, and in this video we're going to be breaking down how they did it. We're going to be discussing the tactics that Oliver Glasner used to not only keep out Manchester City but also get Crystal Palace that all-important FA Cup victory. Going into the game, we knew what we were going to get from Crystal Palace. A solid, resolute defence, good counter-attacking opportunities. But from Manchester City, there was very much a question mark in how Pep Guardiola would lay out his side to best try to exploit this Palace defence. This sturdy, really good Palace defence. And this is what Pep Guardiola came up with. And if I'm honest with you, I really do think that it played into Crystal Palace's hands. And I'll explain why. Not only did Oliver Glasner really look to this system that City played and really try to nullify it, but at the same time it also gave Crystal Palace a number of different opportunities to counter-attack back the other way. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But what Manchester City opted for was a front two of Marmoush and Haaland. Now already that's quite interesting. One of the first times that they've been playing with each other, and also the interplay between the two was really quite a little bit off. To try and get the ball to them, you saw a midfield three of De Bruyne, Silva and O'Reilly once O'Reilly inverted from that left back role. Defensively, you'd see City in a back four with O'Reilly tucking in next to Guardiola. But going forwards, very much when Manchester City had the ball, you'd see the left back inverting. Doku and Savinho moving but for both the right and left hand sides to try and spread the play as much as possible. But it was really in the facilitation of possession that Manchester City found themselves unstuck quite a lot of the time, and I'll explain why right now. Because of the positioning of both Mitchell and Munoz, it left 1v1 opportunities against Savinho and Doku. But conversely, what you also had is a 3v2 continuously with Richards, Lacroix and Mark Guéhi against Marmoush and Haaland. Kamada and Wharton was able to shuffle across and really snuff out that central area for City, even though they bolstered that midfield area with Silva, De Bruyne and O'Reilly. Now initially, you had good balance between the side. Doku with his right foot, O'Reilly with his left foot, you had De Bruyne with his right foot and Savinho with his left foot, giving an opportunity for good crosses to come into the box. The problem that City had is the crosses were too far away from each other. There wasn't enough consistency, and time after time again, you saw them trying to recycle. They recycled because of the good defensive play of Crystal Palace. Instead of holding a mid-block, what you ended up having them is dropping a little bit deeper. This is naturally because of the pace that Haaland and Marmoush would have beyond this Crystal Palace line. But dropping a little bit deeper meant that that space wasn't there, forcing City to go out wide into these duels. And while they were happy to do that, time after time again, Crystal Palace were able to drop players back to help with those headers, to help with those aerial duels, and then recycle back the other way. Although Palace didn't have a lot of the ball, only 22% of it. Again, that means that City had 78% possession in this game. But what were they able to do with it? Not a lot at all. Akanji, Diaz and Guardiola continuously recycling possession. There was a crazy stat at halftime with the fact that Diaz had more touches and more passes, more completed passes than the entire Crystal Palace side. But it was so well done due to the positioning of both Eze and Sarr. What they ended up doing was positioning themselves in front of O'Reilly and Kevin De Bruyne all off the time, meaning that when Mateta dropped back to Mark Silva, the middle of the pitch was completely blocked off, forcing again Manchester City to utilise these flanks. Happy to have that, Crystal Palace opted for those 1v1 systems, but then once you had Savinho or Doku getting the ball, immediately what you had was double ups with Sarr and with Eze. Really good work, shuffling from side to side, and it prevented a lot of those opportunities going forwards. It was top class defending. And there's a perfect example of it right here. So what have you got here? From Crystal Palace, it is a sensational defensive setup that really prevented Manchester City from getting any kind of proper attacking foothold within the game. Yes, they had 78% possession. Yes, they were able to really dominate the ball and recycle the ball around continuously for high pressure attacks. A number of high-pressure moments on the goal, and of course it forced out a number of quite good saves from Dean Henderson, including the penalty, and I'm sure there were a number of contentious decisions that Manchester City fans, and I'm sure other fans, will have wanted to talk about. But from a defensive point of view, Crystal Palace were absolutely sensational at blocking off this centre of the park. And when we look at Manchester City, what we've actually got is that formation that I spoke about. So you've got their back three here in Guardiola, in Diaz, and in Akanji. That's your back three once Nico O'Reilly moves into midfield. And then you've got your midfield three. You've got him, you've got De Bruyne, who swapped with Bernardo Silva just on that right-hand side. Typically, you'd have Bernardo Silva in this position as well. Out on the wide areas, you had Doku, and of course you had Savinho, who's currently recycling possession here. And then you've also got your front two in Haaland and in Marmoush. But with Crystal Palace, what you had is a good defensive line with that back three. You had your two holding midfielders being able to shuffle across to both Haaland and Marmoush and then drop back for any kind of aerial threat that might come their way. But at the same time, notice the positioning of the two 10s that Crystal Palace have. Sarr and Eze did an absolutely sensational job, and this is where I believe the game was won and lost. I think Pep Guardiola's utilisation of Nico O'Reilly and of Kevin De Bruyne in these inside channels would look to try and find those whipped-in crosses towards the likes of Marmoush and especially Erling Haaland. In dropping back those 10s as deep as possible and having them be as narrow as they were, it prevented City from being able to utilise those inside channels, forcing them out wide. Notice where Sarr is onto O'Reilly. Notice where Eze is, just marking Bernardo Silva in this particular occasion. And then you've got the main man himself, Mateta, dropping back onto De Bruyne. It prevented that progression right here. It meant that there was no go zone for the centre of the park, again forcing them out wide. And here, as you can see, Mitchell is more than happy to try and aggress onto Savinho, which forces him back. This happened time after time again, and even though Manchester City had a couple of attempts, Crystal Palace were more or less pretty comfortable. But Palace needed to score. They needed to go forwards and get themselves a goal in this final. With 78% of the ball for City and obviously 22% of the ball for Crystal Palace, they needed to find some way of maximising the opportunities they were able to create because they were so few and far between. What they came up with and what Oliver Glasner came up with is this. In goading Manchester City into pressing them into different scenarios across the pitch, it allowed Crystal Palace to maintain and gain a little bit more space further up the pitch and give them those 1v1 opportunities. I'm in particular talking about Mateta onto Diaz, Mateta onto the likes of Bernardo Silva, Sarr running in beyond, Munoz running in beyond, and taking advantage of the positioning of Nico O'Reilly in the transition. One area that I think Pep Guardiola really failed to manage and failed to really isolate was the transitional play, or the blocking of the transitional play through his midfield components. And by that I mean that Nico O'Reilly moving in field gives space in beyond for Munoz to run into. Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva aren't necessarily defensively savvy. They're not really going to be stopping those counterattacks. They're not going to be preventing that transition. And that is where Crystal Palace really hurt Manchester City. The failure to really have the aggression onto Mateta to really smother him in situations and prevent him from turning and playing the pass into Munoz to run down the wing. When you're looking towards Haaland pressing, when you're looking towards Doku pressing, Marmoush, what you're also doing at the same time is moving this back line of Manchester City higher because you're wanting to condense the pitch, you're wanting to gamble and go forwards. But in doing that, you're also giving a number of different avenues of space for Crystal Palace to then go and exploit, for Eze to then take into, for Munoz to then run into, Sarr, Mateta. And once Mateta starts to drop and pick those passes and link that play, it then becomes very good and a very high quality opportunity for Crystal Palace. Don't get me wrong, Manchester City dominated possession, they dominated the moments in the game, and they really had their foothold on the momentum with the match. But when Crystal Palace did go forwards, they were very, very dangerous. And those tactics come together to create this, the goal that won Crystal Palace the FA Cup. So what have you got? Already, look at the deep line of this Crystal Palace back line. You've got Richards on the ball currently, encouraging that press from Doku, encouraging that press from Marmoush. Remember, pushing and enticing them into the areas that Crystal Palace want them to be able to isolate those duels between Mateta and that Manchester City back line, but also exposing that space in beyond. So as As Richards plays the ball over the top, you've got Doku just missing out here. Notice the positioning of Munoz as well. He's going to be the assister for this goal, but notice how deep he is. It's then about making those movements forward, taking that space. You're then going to spin this Manchester City back line. Notice the positioning of Haaland as well, engaging in that press, and look at what you've got right here. You've got Mateta pinning himself onto Guardiola, making himself be really a nuisance, and with that you've got those supporting runs of Kamada. You've got Eze just here as well, ready to spin and beyond, and then look at the amount of space, look how high this Man City line is, and you're looking to exploit and turn them over, transition them really quickly. Mateta brings it into Kamada, who is then going to be pressured by both De Bruyne and Silva. But notice the positioning of both of those as you're transitioning Manchester City round. Because Mateta has been able to take the ball down, you're now turning Manchester City. You're preventing them from regaining that tempo that they had earlier on in the game. Notice the positioning of O'Reilly here as well. He's going to be beaten for pace, and by positioning by Munoz a little bit later, Kamada gives the ball back to Mateta, who is then able to swivel, turn, and then make the moment his. Munoz is now in full flow, running down that right-hand side. Notice the positioning of Mitchell as well. The width for Crystal Palace is extremely crucial. Pace, power, taking that space as well. Look how much space Munoz has to run into, and it's this space that Mateta sees. So as Mateta spins, he's going to see this ball on. But notice the Crystal Palace players. You've got Eze, you've got Mateta spinning, you've got Munoz, you've got Sarr, you've got Mitchell on the far side, all running forwards, taking that spacing, being really aggressive, because they enticed Manchester City on with that press to begin with. So as the ball gets turned over, you've got the ball going over to Munoz, and then it's about the quality that Crystal Palace have. It's about the quality that Munoz has to be able to take this moment, cross it into the box. But with that cross, you need runners. With that cross, you need Mateta, you need Eze, you need Mitchell. All of these players willing to go and break that Manchester City back line. City don't recover well enough, they're not quick enough, they're not sharp enough, and as the ball comes into the box, you're then looking for those late runners. If it misses Mateta, you need it to hit Eze, you need it to hit Mitchell, and it does hit Eze. Of course, it's going to be him, isn't it? It's a fantastic cross, it's a brilliant finish, and it finalises Crystal Palace's win against Manchester City, giving them their first major trophy. It is a sensational achievement, and what a goal it was. What a defensive display it was. What a game it was. Crystal Palace will remember that forever. What a match. It was absolutely fantastic. But of course, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you make of Manchester City? What did you make of Oliver Glasner's Crystal Palace? And how did you find the game? Let me know your thoughts on all the incidents in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.